All right, now that we're safely about a month into Edge of Eternities, I figured it's the perfect time to talk about each of the potential commanders of this set. It's always fun videos I like seeing other people do, so I thought I'd throw my opinion out there. This is very much not strength of the commander, although I mean that might play some of a role, but this isn't just what's the most competitive commander out there. It's just what ones I think are the most fun, kind of taking a page out of what Tomer does over on MTG Goldfish. But yeah, what I think is going to be the most fun ones that top one there, ones that I want to build in paper, ones I think might be a fun commander, and who knows, maybe sometime I do get to building them in paper. But I mean, there's so many sets. Probably just one or two make it into paper, and even of those, I may not actually get to all of them. Then the maybe section, then 99, which means probably not a commander, but it could be a spot in a 99. Then I have specific deck, which is like maybe there's an edge case deck out there that it goes into the 99, but maybe not. And then just flat out, no, this is not a card that I see myself ever playing really in Commander. And if we're being perfectly honest, a lot of them probably do end up falling into that spot at the end of the day, but we'll still give them all a chance. And we'll start with Alferial, I think is his name, or Alpha Real. Alpha Real is what it looks like, but I'm pretty sure it's Ethereal or Ethereal. Either way, there's a couple of him going in alphabetical order here, and we'll start with the mono black one, which is the mythic, the 3 and 2 black for a ward, discard a random card, which I do think that part is fun. Like, I almost just want to play this guy just for the ward cost of making someone discard a card at random. Then Void, when Ethereal attacks, if a non-land permanent has left the battlefield this turn, or something is warped this turn, then defending player loses half of their life rounded up, which in 1v1, like limited, that's a pretty good bomb. Just make them lose half their health there, and you obviously are going to get a lot of warp stuff going on. In Commander, I mean, I don't know that this is really a guy that I see myself using much in Commander. I think maybe like you put him in there in like a mono black, but still it's 5 mana for a 3/3. I don't think I said that, and you're making one player lose half their health. It's like a third of the value you get for the big butt Baitor, the main set Baitor from Tarkir Dragonstorm. If you hit I mean, you do have to hit the 40 life, so this is a much easier hurdle to get than the Baitor. You have to have 40 toughness on your board at your end step, and this is a much easier hurdle to get to, but still one player per turn. I don't know, I mean, maybe in the 99 somewhere. Again, just the word cost makes me think it would be kind of fun to use him. And obviously it's not that hard of a trigger to hit. You'd have some sort of sack outlets or just a removal. It's targeted permanents or any permanent, so it can be an opponent's permanent. Yeah, I don't know. We'll try and get through this a little quick. I think maybe 99 there. Honestly, leaning towards probably more specific deck, but I think there's multiple decks that can go in, just probably not your commander. At least not in, multiplayer commander setting. And then we have the other Alferial, the Dreaming Acolyte. This one might be the worst of all of them. I think there's one other that I can think of off the top of my head that falls into potentially that category, but yeah, he's one blue and a black, so Dimir, you get another color, and much cheaper for a 2/3. But the effect you're getting it's pretty obvious why he's cheaper. When he enters, you draw 2 cards, then discard a card, or discard 2 cards unless the card you discarded was an artifact. So obviously you're playing an artifact deck. You're not going to want to just, or I suppose maybe you want to put cards in the graveyard, but then it's just when he enters. It's not even when he enters or attacks, just when he enters. So maybe you're blinking him. Blinking and wheeling is what you want to be doing. And then during your turn, he has Death Touch, which is the worst time to have Death Touch. So, I mean, it's not bad. Obviously, you can still attack in, and they probably aren't going to want to kill it. But, yeah, you can attack pretty safely with them, and they're probably not going to want to kill it, because why would you? I don't see it. I think it's a no. I mean, yeah, unless you're specifically playing, and I suppose there's specific deck, but even then I don't know if you're playing this, but yeah, unless you're playing a blink/wheel deck, I think you have to work pretty hard to make him do anything. Up next, we have the Dawn Sire, the first of the spacecraft that can be your commander. Obviously, the new thing that everyone, I'm sure, is well aware of at this point, where legendary artifacts that can at least be a creature at some point, of their own accord, I should say, not something else makes them a creature, but can at some point of on the card they have a toughness and power toughness box. They have to have power toughness box on the card and be a legendary artifact. Then they can be your commander. So yeah, a lot of vehicles and some spaceship now from the set. This being the first one, Dawnspire Sunstar Dreadnought. It has a 5 mana colorless, so you're in a colorless deck, which is, you know, sometimes a bit of a limiter unless you're playing Eldrazi, I suppose. But then crew for 10, nothing when it hits the battlefield, so that's not great. You're paying 5 to have nothing happen right away. But once you do get it crewed up for 10, stationed up for 10, excuse me, not crewed up. Once you get it stationed up for 10, then whenever you attack, not when Dawnspire attacks, when you attack with anything else, Dawnspire deals 100 damage to target creature or planeswalkers. So you just start blowing things up. Obviously, if you're doing some sort of, I mean, if you want to have this as a commander, you could still get some, I think there's still some artifacts in there that do the, when you deal damage to this, deals damage to an opponent. Forget what that's called. There's a card in this set that it's red, so you couldn't have this as the commander and also have that card in the deck. Oh, what is it called? The something doll. I know there's a name for this effect that I'm just totally spacing on right now, but yeah, just the hit. That's kind of the one I think you're trying to do in commanders, just one-shot people by dealing 100 damage to your own creature, and then that damage gets dealt to one of the players and just instantly kills them more likely than not. And that's just 10 to crew it. So by the time you are playing this on turn 4 or 5, you could potentially be there, have a couple big creatures out. And later in the game, you can, you know, warp in something or what have you. You can certainly get to that 10 without too much difficulty, I think. But it is still certainly more of a price. You're paying 5 and then the opportunity cost of whatever tough or whatever power to get it to 10. So there's some opportunity cost lost there, but then you still have to have one thing to attack to get that trigger to happen on that same turn. So at least you don't have to have it, you know, you don't have to have it as a creature to get that to happen. You just have to get it up to 10 and then it can start sniping things while still just being an artifact and not being a creature. So it's not vulnerable to creature board wipes. And then once you do get it up to 20, if you choose to go there, it becomes a flying 20/20, which as your commander doesn't take much more to just kill them with commander damage. Just put like a +1/+1 equipment or aura on it, and that's one-shotting with commander damage. So maybe you just go that route. I mean, try to probably get through these a little quicker, but I think this one, it's very limited, but I do kind of want to build. I'm between Fun Commander and Paper, honestly, for me. Now, again, I don't think this is the strongest commander, but I want to at least build, I don't know if I'll build them all in Paper, but I want to build a commander deck for each of the different color possibilities, color combinations, or monocolors, and I have not landed on one that I want to do for colorless yet, partially because I mean, my wife has an Eldrazi deck, and I just don't want to, like, Eldrazi feels like the cheap way out of doing a colorless deck. So this is one that I've thought about. Could be some fun. I do really like this set's whole theme of kind of the sci-fi spacecraft stuff, and it would be fun to have a spacecraft commander. So, you know what, I'm going to lean towards having it in Paper. It does seem like there's some fun ways you can make this happen. Different lines to find a way to get this deck to win. Again, probably not the most powerful thing in the world, but it could be some fun. I suppose one other thing, if you do get it equipped with +1/+1. I don't think Blades of Selves has that, but if you equip it with Myriad, get it to attack every player at once and the +1/+1, then you can maybe take out all 3 players at once. That's probably the one thing you want to be careful of just dealing, if you do have a way to deal that 100 damage to someone's face, that you don't want to just, you know, take one person out and then not have a way to also end the game and make one person just kind of sit there. Is a bit of a feels bad in a casual commander game, which you're certainly playing casual commander if you're running the Dreadnought as your commander. But we'll move on. to the next one, another artifact here, but this time we're back to a typical legendary creature commander, the Diadrine Synthesis Amalgam. Kind of a odd looking construct thing here. I think it looks kind of cool, the base art there, and the special art also has like one of those hero versions of it. It looks kind of fun. And you got a Selesnya commander here, X and green white, for a trampling 0/1. So not, specifically strong looking stat line out the gate, but he enters with a number of 1/1 counters equal to the amount of mana you paid to cast it, which doesn't get around commander. Doesn't get around the commander tax that you have to pay, but it does make use of that commander tax. So even if you could play it for just the one green and white, and get him out here there is a 2/3 on turn 2, or you could, if he ends up dying a couple times and he ends up costing 6, 8, 10 mana, well, whatever he costs, he's gonna come out there bigger every time, just by the virtue of you having to pay more mana to play him. So it doesn't get around it, but it does take advantage of that mechanic of commander. And then whenever you attack, you may remove a 1/1 counter from each of up to 2 creatures you control, and if you do, draw a card and create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact. So you can remove 2 counters to make a robot. I don't know how much you're using that, but I suppose if you do throw in some like token doublers, you throw in like a couple token doublers. Obviously this goes great with like a doubling season where you're doubling both the 1/1 counters and the tokens. So you are then you're sacrificing 2 +1/+1 counters for 2 robots instead. And then you can, have ways to spread 1/1 counters. I think there's a fun deck in there somewhere. I don't know if I'll build it. I haven't landed on a Selesnya commander either quite yet, so like maybe, but I kind of feel like I want to go more group hug with a Selesnya deck. So I think I'll put it in fun commander now. I have considered the idea of building it, but only so much time I can devote to it, and there's already some other commanders that I'm quite interested in building this set. Fun enough that I might like build it on Architect or Moxfield just for the theorycraft fun of it. But another fun one, and to me more fun than the other Selesnya commander we have here right after in Halia Ascendant Cadet. This is one of the uncommon ones, so there's another Halia later, but Halia, maybe it's probably the way you pronounce that. But either way, this one we got 2 green and double white. Whenever Halia enters or attacks, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever one or more creatures you control with a 1/1 counter on them deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. So you got some 1/1 counters. You definitely draw cards off of it. Obviously, you can draw up to 3 cards a turn. You're not going to get, if you have 3 creatures attacking one player, you're still going to get 1 for even if all 3 of them connect. But if you can get damage in on all 3 of your opponents, you can draw up to 3 cards in an attack phase, which is pretty decent. But there are much stronger ways, I think, to do that, or to play this 1/1 counter game in Selesnya specifically. I think a pretty decent card in the 99. If you were going to build the Synthesis Amalgam guy, then you might throw that in the 99. Pretty decent way to get some card draw there, but probably not. I feel like if you're going to go 1/1 counters in Selesnya, just even from this set, you're probably going with the Synthesis Amalgam rather than Halia here. Of course, if you want to go the mono white route, there's another Halia for you. It comes in at rare, 2 and a single white. Yeah, the rare one a little bit cheaper here, and back to being monocolored though. So 2 and a white, and whenever Halia or another creature or artifact you control enters, you gain a life. So you're life gaining for creatures, kind of your soul sisters type of effect here. But they do have to enter under your control rather than just enter anywhere on the battlefield. So there's, was it like the Soul Guide or something like that from one of the modern, where it enters under, and you do get creature and artifacts. So certainly if you're playing an artifact deck here, or like something with treasures or clues or food, You can definitely be gaining a fair amount of life here. And at the beginning of your end step, draw a card if you've gained 3 or more life this turn. So that certainly would lean itself towards food or a token strategy where you're pumping in a lot of creatures on a specific turn. And again, only at your end step is that going to trigger, but it's still, get a card for having gained some life. You can warp it in early on. I don't know that this is really a commander. Again, mono white there's all sorts of ways to do mono white life gain that I think you can find better leaders for, but still a pretty decent card in the 99. Another way to gain life for getting creatures out and artifacts in this particular case. So even if you just want to play an artifact deck and I suppose get a little extra life gain on the side, I don't know if this is really a strong enough effect that if you're playing an artifact deck that this is one of the, you're not playing a ton of slots in an artifact deck that aren't artifacts, and I think there's stronger ways to use those slots. So this is probably more you're looking at something like a token strategy, or maybe if you're doing really something specific, but then we get more into that specific deck range. I think it's fine in a 99 for a life gain deck where you're going to be running some mana rocks and stuff like that. You'll find ways to gain random life from artifacts. I think you're more focused on the creatures there. And then we get to the first of the sets from the Commander precons, and this one is Hearthhole the World Seed. This one, I'm just going to put it right up there right now. I did get this deck and worked on changing it a little bit. I do like, every now and then playing a precon for the sake of a precon. I have one that I pretty much have kept other than a couple parts I took out of it. It's like a horror one, horrors from a while back that I mostly kept as a precon, but this one I've changed up a bit. Didn't make it too crazy powerful, but it's Hearthhole the World Seed, 1 in Jund, black, red, and green, one of each, for another legendary artifact spacecraft station. Again, nothing when it comes in, so you're paying 4 to just get a thing out there, but you do get to station it pretty quick for just 2, so that shouldn't be too hard to do. If you're playing it, you probably are stationing it on the same turn, and then you get the effect of 1 and tap it to sacrifice a land, draw 2 cards. You may play an additional land this turn, so you're doing some landfall things and sacking a land. So you're sacking a land to play a land, doing a bunch of, you're wheeling lands, playing extra lands a turn, all the things that landfall likes to do. But then if you're ready to potentially try to end the game or at least take somebody out, you can station it up to 8, which once you're already at 2, you're probably not doing it all in one turn, but maybe you do, I don't know. That's just 6 more, and by the time you're thinking about ending a game and you're ready to do something big, you can probably pretty safely have that planned out to get it up to that 8. Then it becomes a Flying Vigilance Haste 6/7 creature with whenever you sacrifice a land, each opponent loses 2 life. So at this point, you're probably thinking a couple turns down the road. You get it crewed back up to that 6, and then you do something like Scape Shift, or they had the one in the precon, the Planetary Annihilation. You'd have to have quite a few lands out there to probably take too many people out with Planetary Annihilation, which makes you sacrifice lands down to 6. Or you could have just out like a Zurin Orb or some sort of land sacrifice outlet. There's plenty of ways to sacrifice lands throughout Magic's history that you can just... another one would be like Sylvan Safekeeper, so that's even one where you can sacrifice a land, put the Shroud on the Hearthhole so no one's interacting with it until you're done with whatever you're doing. You just go crazy, sacrifice as many lands as you can, and that is Hearthhole dealing damage to those people. So all you have to do is sacrifice, it doesn't matter how much life they have. I guess it's, maybe it's not him dealing damage, so it is just each opponent loses 2 life. It's not Hearthhole deals 2 damage to each player, so maybe I was wrong about that. But either way, if you got 10, 11 lands on the battlefield at that point, you can still make everyone lose 20. At that point, people are kind of in that range of like 20 to 30 life anyway, even in a casual game, so you could probably end the game pretty easily with some sort of sack outlet, or like a Scape Shift type thing. If you're doing Scape Shift, then you're sacking a bunch of lands, and even the people you don't take out, you are also probably have some landfall triggers that you're going to go crazy with and be able to finish it after the fact. So you can do that before combat and then finish off anyone else after combat. It looks like a lot of fun to me. Haven't played it just yet, but I kind of gone the landfall burn route, so the idea of getting them low enough. So we got a bunch of just like, there's a handful of commons and uncommons, like 4 or 5 of them that we already have out. Just one of them came out in Final Fantasy, where it's just landfall deals the damage to each opponent. Yeah, there's a bunch of. I mean, there's the one in the set we'll see a little bit later on. So the idea that I went with is just trying to burn people down with landfall, get them low enough that then when I'm ready to do it, I can sack maybe even just 5, 6, 7 lands and deal somewhere in the teens in damage and win the game that way. But people will probably see it coming. I mean, it is an artifact. It's got that right there, but I think it could be a pretty fun one. And we'll stick with that spacecraft theme as we move into another one of the spacecrafts here. This one is back to the main set. It is the Wooburg commander of the set. We got our 1 token Wooburg commander at least. The Infinite Guideline Station is a Wooburg, no extra, so you're paying 5 for a legendary spacecraft that does do something when it comes in. When this Infinite Guideline Station enters, create a tapped 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token for each multicolored permanent you control. So you're already getting value right away, which is good because you're not doing anything else with it until you crew it up for, again, station it up for 12, which I suppose, if all you have to have is 6 multicolored permanents out there. So if you're playing some sort of one of the Niv Mizzet, the Wooburg Niv Mizzets, you probably could be playing a fair amount of colorless spells. I think this goes perfectly well in one of those Niv Mizzet decks, or the Niv Mizzets could go perfectly well in one of this deck of this one. I think this looks pretty fun. I do have a problem of I just enjoy building Wooburg commanders, so I already have a few of them. I don't know if I'll get around to doing this one, but I kind of want to, so we'll see what happens there. I think I'm definitely going to throw this one up in the fun commanders. 6 multicolored permanents out there by the time this hits the battlefield, which I think that's kind of what you'd plan on doing. Then that's already 6 2/2 robots that come out there with summoning sickness, but they do come out tapped, so you can't. I guess they do come in tapped, so I guess it's not going to let you just crew yourself right away. I'm thinking through this as it goes. Either way, crew for 12, so you get 6 out there, and you'll be able to crew it up next turn pretty easily. Then by the time it gets crewed up for that 12, it becomes a flying 7/15 with whenever the Infinite Guideline Station attacks, draw a card for each multicolored permanent you control. So you're making creatures when it enters, and then you crew up with those creatures or the multicolored ones that you had to make them in the first place, and then you swing in to draw a bunch of cards. So is it the best? No. Is it better in the 99 of the Wooburg Niv Mizzets? Maybe. You know what? Maybe realizing that those come in tapped and you can't just crew it up right away, I'll move it down to a maybe. I like the idea of it. Like, I want it to be in the fun category, but either way, we'll see what happens. Well, we'll move on to the next of the spacecraft commanders here. We have in a little bit of a row, and the next one from one of the precons. It is the other face commander precon. The Jeskai blue, red, white. It's just 3 mana here for a big old spacecraft, the In-Spirit flagship vessel. And this one, again, another spacecraft that, like Hearthhole, comes in with no effect on the battlefield, but again, crews up stations up, I keep saying crew, stations up pretty quick. Just station 1 to get the first ability here on it. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put your choice of a 1/1 counter or 2 charge counters on up to 1 target artifact. So you're definitely doing an artifact here. You're doing Jeskai artifacts, and you get either 1/1 counters or charge counters. Certainly you can lean into those charge counters, and there hasn't been a ton of charge counter synergy throughout Magic, so this is one of the better ways to just get charge counters on for free. And then if you do decide to get it up to being a creature, which makes it a little bit more removable, though it's not that hard to remove an artifact, honestly. Maybe that's just a green player talking who has all the ways to remove artifact I could ever want. But if you do decide to go and make it a creature, which does make it easier to remove, and you're maybe ready to move on from the ability of putting extra counters on things and you want to give things a little bit more protection, well, it makes it a flying 5/5 when you get it stationed up for 8. With other artifacts you control, gain hexproof and indestructible. So Darksteel Forge effect there once you get it stationed up for 8. Of course, that does make this much more of a target, because if they want to get to any of your other artifacts, then, which they probably are, you know your artifacts are probably a target if you're going to the trouble of making this thing a flying 5/5. Yeah, it does make it much more of a target. You'd like to find a way to protect this as well, but I guess you're trying to make your board threatening by adding up 1/1 counters and charge counters for a few turns. And eventually, when you're at a point where you decide that you want to try and protect your other stuff, then you station this up. Unfortunately, station is a sorcery speed, so you can't do it. You know, someone goes to target your thing, you can't station up at instant speed and just make your thing indestructible. But either way, I think pretty neat. I didn't go for this one. I would say maybe. I think it could be a fun artifact commander. Certainly if you're going into charge counters, I think this is about as good as you're going to get for an artifact commander. Or a charge counter commander, I would say. But even then, maybe not, because the other commander from that deck, which has CDH potential, I don't really play CDH, but does look like a lot of fun, is Kilo or Kylo Apogee Mind. I think I've been calling him Kylo, but could be Kilo Apogee Mind. Either way, Mr. Apogee Mind. He is, again, just Jeskai, just 3 mana here. A blue, a red, and a white will get you a 3/3 hasty robot. Legendary artifact creature. So, again, fits pretty well in that artifact theme. And whenever he becomes tapped, you proliferate. Very simple, straight to the point. Kylo taps, you proliferate, and that, just comes out and attacks once on a turn. You proliferate once, but there are plenty of ways to abuse the tapping thing. You can tap and untap. Obviously, you're not going to get into, if you're building him as a commander, you're going to even build this in paper. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, there's plenty of ways to abuse that, tapping and untapping. In blue, you have, if you want to go more of a budget route, you have even just the blue landfall, the retreat to Coral Helm, where that one will give you on landfall, you can choose to tap or untap a target creature. So you can just get an extra tap on your turn. You attack with him or find some other way to tap him for mana or something. Then untap him once you play a land, tap him again. You can proliferate twice on your turn just there pretty easily. Or things like puppet strings, or there's all sorts of different ways that you can find to do lots of tap and untap shenanigans with Kylo and really get out of control pretty quick. So this is one that I think not only can be maybe the strongest commander of the set. We'll see. I know I've seen people play around with him in the CDH scene, which I have not ever built one of those decks, but it's kind of fun just to see what's going on there every now and then. I have seen some people playing around with him as the commander, and I can see why. The card design, I love it. It's straightforward, not a bunch of crazy amounts of text like you see on a lot of commanders these days. Just very haste, when you tap him, proliferate. Simple, straight to the point, very powerful. And the art on this card is, the art in general on this set is pretty amazing. But yeah, I do really like the art on Kylo's. I guess this is the only version of him here, but yeah, it's just fantastic. So a lot to like here. Again, I tend to prefer green, but I don't have a Jeskai deck that I've built yet, and this might be the one. So we'll see. That'll move us back into the main set commanders again, and another one where there's 2 versions of the same character from this Edge of Eternities universe, this realm or realm between realms, wherever we're at here in Edge of Eternities. Another one of these characters that has 2 versions, a rare version in this case, and then an uncommon version. We'll start with the rare version. In Memnon. I think it's Memnon, the right hand. This is the rare version, 2 blue and 3. So got another monocolor commander here for a legendary jellyfish advisor. Excuse me. 3/4 here with flying, and you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast artifact spells from the top of your library. Artifact spells you control have tap, add blue, so this might be a way to, for example, get a Kylo Apogee Mine to be able to tap without putting him in danger through combat. So could already be fitting pretty well into the 99 of that deck, but by himself, yeah, artifacts you control, tap to add blue. Spend this only to cast spells from anywhere other than your hand. So how you use that mana might be a little, obviously for this set that's talking about casting things back out of warp that you've warped in previous turns, but there's plenty of things you can cast from Foretell, Plot more recently. There's a lot of different effects that Magic has had from different sets throughout its time that put things into exile that you can then cast later. Adventure would be another one, so adventure spells. So obviously there's ways to certainly make a whole lot of mana with this, whether you're talking about treasures, clues, whatever, just robot tokens in this set. There's plenty of ways that you could make a whole lot of mana out of this guy, but then you got to find ways to use it. So as a commander, I think it's kind of a fun puzzle. You know, it is. I think it's one that might be a little bit tougher to pull off, but I'd say it could be fun. It's kind of a very specific narrow deck by itself. Like, it doesn't seem that narrow because it's just blue artifacts and you get a bunch of mana, but the figuring out how to spend that mana, I think, is going to be, I don't know, I think it could be kind of fun. I would not call myself at all a mono blue player. In fact, I tend to kind of despise the more mono blue style, but this seems like a fun mono blue. I'm sure someone will make it not fun, but it seems fun right now. Either way, we can move on to the uncommon version of Memnon here. And this is the Uthros Exile. Uthros being the big blue planet in this set. Another way to make a whole lot of blue mana if you can station it up, by the way, if you're in an artifact deck. So I think if you're in Memnon here, you're probably including Uthros unless you're going budget. But either way, the Uthros Exile version of Memnon here is a 1 and blue-red. So you're in an Is It deck here for, again, Jellyfish Advisor, who is a 1/3 this time with still flying. And whenever an artifact you control enters, put a 1/1 counter on target creatures. So, again, as has kind of been the case with, obviously this is not as strong in the command zone. I think it's still a pretty good piece to have. I think it's still a pretty good piece to have in a 99 of a deck. I don't think, unless you're playing real down on the budget as far as commanders are concerned, you're probably not running this guy as your commander. Is it 1/1 counters is not? I mean, I suppose if you're trying to do like an off-color kind of a gimmick deck, or you're doing like some sort of off-color thing, is it 1/1 counters? Is there, find ways there? It happens every now and then. There's certainly like prowess type effects that you get out there, but yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. This is a 99 card, a pretty decent 99. I think you're fairly happy to see it in your artifact deck, but again, maybe if you're probably in a budget artifact deck, this is probably not one that's going to make it over like a Joyra or some other, but yeah, I don't know. You got it laying around from like a draft or a pre-release or whatever. Throw it in your artifact deck, and I think it'll do pretty well in there for you. But that brings us, of course, to the hero of the set as far as this is all concerned, and one that I don't know why I thought it wasn't going to be, or I don't know why I thought that this would be one that would get overlooked. It's pretty clearly, I think, made for Commander and made for people to get hyped about it, and that is Ragost, the Deft Gastronaut. a Boros, 1 red, 1 white, 2 mana commander, Lobster Citizen, 2/2. And Ragost here has artifacts you control are food in addition to their other types. And of course, then foods, the whole pay 2, tap, get sacrifice the artifact, get 3 life. But you get foods. All your artifacts are foods. So again, you're probably in an artifact deck. Or maybe just in a deck that makes a whole lot of artifact tokens, makes a bunch of treasures, all that kind of stuff. You probably don't need to specifically be putting your own artifacts on the table, just making a bunch of artifact tokens that you can then sacrifice as food for all sorts of different things. And one of those different things could be 1 and tap, sacrifice of food. Ragost deals 3 damage to each opponent. And with Ragost as your commander, if you're, again, find a way to untap Ragost a few times, and you can if you can find a way to untap him 6 times, you can sack 7 food and just kill everybody with commander damage right then and there. So there's some fun to be had with Ragost. I do not have a Boros deck yet. This is certainly a contender for my Boros deck. Oh man, 4 in paper right now. I'm gonna move Kylo down to fun. I don't know if I'm going to get around to building Kylo, but Ragost I think I want to. Maybe I'll move. There we go. That's, as I say, I don't want to have too many up in paper and commit myself to. We'll see, but we'll move these 2 up to the top of the fun commander zone. But Ragost is one that I have the Fire Song and Sunkeeper guys that I've been thinking about building a Spellslinger Boros deck around. Just never really got to it because Boros, to be perfectly honest, Boros just doesn't interest me that much. But Ragost, I don't know. I fell victim to it. I love the lobster meme, and I do have the fool. I did get one of the completely valueless as far as money is concerned, so very easy to pick up. But the cool full art hero version of him, where he's got like a posing in front of a sun, silhouetted in front of a sun with got a little mushroom falling in front of him. But gotta love Ragost. One that I'm sure people are already seeing at commander tables over these last few weeks. And of course, there's definitely ways to go infinite with Ragost, and you could probably find. I'm sure someone's going to try and build him in CEDH, and it's not going to be that great, but it'll be fun. But I don't know. Maybe not. Red kind of, from what I've heard, Red kind of sucks in CEDH right now, so who knows? I think it would be more of a meme if we're being honest, but you could make a pretty strong Ragost deck, and we'll see. Either way, we'll move on to some more Boros shenanigans with a couple of Sammys. We'll start with the not as great Sammy and Sammy Ship's Engineer. Sammy Ship's Engineer is an uncommon, a 2 and Boros 2/4 for a human artificer, and at the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, you create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. So that's a lot of hoops to jump through. You're paying for an overcosted creature and then having to attack, which, I mean, if you're Boros, not too hard to attack with a couple of creatures, have some tapped things at the end of at your end step. But yeah, it's just a lot of hoops to jump through for kind of a bad creature, and then when you jump through all those hoops and you get a 2/2 token, I don't know. This is the other one that was the contender for just like worst card, worst legendary of the set. I don't see any way. There's not even an artifact deck, I think, where you're playing that. Even if you're wanting to make tokens, I just don't see it. I don't see any reason you're playing it unless you've decided that you just really want to lean into like a Sammy tribal deck for whatever possible reason you could have. I mean, I suppose the upside there is if you just really want to have both versions of Sammy, then you could have a pretty strong commander in the other Sammy, the mythic version. Sammy Wildcat Captain, 4 Amboros this time, so a bit more on the expensive end. Still overcosted. He's a 4/4 for 6. But this human artificer rogue, so this is Sammy's bad side. I guess he got tired of being trashed as the ship's engineer and not really doing anything, so he went rogue, and boy did he come out more powerful on the other side. I don't actually know what the lore for this set is, so I'm just making this up, but This 4/4 has double strike and vigilance, and then spells you cast have affinity for artifacts. So anything you cast, you're certainly in artifacts. Again, you're probably looking also to pump out a fair amount of artifact tokens. But this is falling into where if you're in an artifact deck, whether it's 99 or what, this is probably going in your artifact deck if you're in red and white. It's just you get him out there on turn 6. You probably already have, maybe turn 5. Whenever you get this 6-cost creature out there, you probably have a fair amount of artifacts, and unless someone can deal with him right away, you can probably cast the rest of your hand for free. So, yeah, this is... I don't know if it's really my style, but I think this is one of the stronger commanders of the set. I think it's the strongest commander of the set is between this guy and Kilo or Kylo. Again, I think it's just kind of just a Boros good stuff pile. So I don't know that it'll be a fun enough deck build for me to actually go ahead and do it in Boros, which is really not my typical colors. But it's not very expensive right now, so I might just get it and throw it into a Ragos. Like if I do build the Ragos deck, I probably will just get one because he's cheap and throw it into the Ragos deck, and then I've got a bunch of artifact anyway because I'm trying to stack them for food. And I mean, I don't hate casting spells for free, so yeah, that's certainly one of the stronger commanders of this set. As we move on, I don't know if this next one is quite in that category of the best commanders from this set, but I think it's certainly one of the more fun ones, or at least one of the more fun text boxes by itself. It's just got a lot going on here. Pretty solid 2-cost, a black and a white for Seer Von Dam here. Another one of these ones where there's 2 of them. This is the rare version, so we got Seer Von Dam. I'm pretty sure that's how you call it. Maybe Sire. Either way, the Sunstar Exemplar. Black and a white for a 2/2 human knight with vigilance and menace, so you're already getting a 2-mana 2/2 with 2 keywords, and then on top of that you get whenever a creature you control dies or is put into exile, put a 1/1 counter on Seer and you gain 1 life. So I mean, just for this set, things like warping something in when it pops out to exile, you get a 1/1 counter and you gain a life. We're already doing some pretty good stuff there. All sorts of different ways for things to come into play and leave and make that trigger happen. But then you also get when Seer Von Dam dies or is put into exile, while its power is 4 or greater, destroy up to 1 target permanent. So if this is your commander and someone decides to go take care of it because it's gotten a little bit out of control, you still get to come back and take out whatever the best thing on their board is. And unless unless it's the person at the bottom of the totem pole and they don't really have anything of particular value to take out, then you're still, it's a little bit of a deterrent. If someone has a board where they've got something they really don't want to lose, they might not be coming after Seer just because they don't want you to immediately go and take out. Now, it does say destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent, so you don't necessarily need to take out a piece of whoever's taking out something from your board. So if it is the person that's got nothing really of value on their board that's taking out Seer, you can just go and get something from one of your other opponents. But I think more often than not, you're probably just going to be doing that spite play of taking out whatever's biggest on their board. Of course, it is non-land, so you can't go after their lands if they've been wiped and they're just trying to rebuild still. Either way, I think this is a pretty fun commander here. Again, black-white, not really usually my color combination, but I don't think I'll build it, but I think it's a pretty fun one. It's one that I would certainly consider at least like playing around with, building again, just like net decking something, or not net decking, but building a Moxfield or Architect thing and playing around with it a bit, and who knows, maybe I'll like it enough that it's worth going for. The art on the card is absolutely fantastic. Human Knight is a little bit boring for me, but I might make an exception with how fun this one looks like it could be. And again, you got a little bit of another one of these Soul Sister type effects with whenever a creature... I mean, this is actually less Soul Sister with a creature entering a more kind of the opposite with a creature dying, so you kind of get it going the other way, almost like a Blood Artist, but you don't get the ping of an opponent. You get a 1/1 counter and gaining a life rather than dealing a damage and gaining life, but still. Yeah, a fun commander there. The other Seer is much more expensive. 2 a white and 2 black. This is the Seer Von Dam, the Lucent. And you're getting a 5 mana 4/4. So a little undercosted, but you do get Death Touch and Lifelink, which those are pretty good keywords to get with a creature. Now, you can certainly defend pretty well. Obviously, Death Touch, you're probably going out with a block on Death Touch. But I guess you get to take 4 life and kill whatever big thing is swinging in if you're blocking with that Death Touch and making use of it. Either way, you also get, whenever Seer Von Dam enters or attacks, other creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain Death Touch until the end of the turn. Again, aggressive Death Touch like this, a Death Touch on your attack. If you're going wide, you know, you're making a bunch of then Death Touchy tokens that are coming in at someone, and they're probably less likely to want to block, just freely block a bunch of 1/1s or 2/2s, a bunch of random tokens. They might not want to be just blocking those and losing whatever they block with, unless they have a bunch of tokens of their own. So, yeah, it's all right. It's much more of a 99 piece again. The uncommon set of these guys where there's 2 of them. The characters from this set where you got the uncommon version and then a rare or mythic version. The uncommons, at least so far, have been pretty unanimously down here in this bottom tier. Not bottom tier, I suppose, but in the 99, they're all fairly flexible. I mean, I guess you get 2 of them that are just a flat out no, but they're all fairly. We don't have anything that's specific deck yet. There's nothing that's like, yeah, I could kind of see that working in one deck. A lot of this is somewhat flexible, but yeah, it's still a 99 piece all the same. Anyway, moving on, enough rambling about that. Up next, we've got Sazerul, I think Sazerul Genesis Shepherd here. This is the backup commander, or the more traditional commander, I suppose, from the Jund Hearthhole precon, the land sacrifice precon. And Sazerul here, the Genesis Shepherd, is a 5 mana 2/5, so again a little understated, but that's alright. We got a 2 and Jund flying 2/5 insect druid with you may play lands from your graveyard, so we're getting more things, more Crucible of Worlds stapled onto cards. And whenever you sacrifice another non-token permanent during your turn, put a number of 1/1 counters equal to Sazerul's power on up to 1 other target creature. So obviously in this particular deck, when you're sacrificing lands, then you sacrifice the lands, you get the number of 1/1 counters equal to his power on other creatures, so that's generally going to be 2 1/1 counters, unless you've found ways to get more on him. Then you can start really spreading around some power, and I suppose if you're running him as your commander, then you can definitely find ways to get some more power on him one way or another, and then just start spreading big power around when you sacrifice other permanents. Now you can do this aristocrats, you can do it more the land sacrifice way, like this deck is meant to be with Hearthhole. And if you are going that route, obviously you can play those lands right back from your graveyard, so it definitely points you still in that direction. I think it works pretty well with Hearthhole. There's definitely some of these precons where you'll get the 2 commanders that they can kind of work together, but it almost seems like they want to do slightly different things. And while there's a little bit of that with this guy, I mean, you're running into some 1/1 counters which Hearthhole doesn't really care about. Although I suppose adding the 1/1 counters would help you crew Hearthhole up to that 8 pretty quickly. But aside from that, yeah, it's still pointing pretty heavily at that land sacrifice theme, and I think a pretty fun one. Personally, I don't know that. I mean, I have him in the Hearthhole deck. I'm not going to take him out. I think it works well enough that I'm just going to go ahead and keep him in that Hearthhole deck. I don't know if I would build him on his own. I'd say maybe. It's kind of a maybe for me on whether or not I would build Sazerul by himself. You can certainly start spreading around a lot of power if you go kind of an aristocrats or land sacrifice way. You could definitely find a way to make a board pretty big pretty quick. There's probably more efficient ways to do that than what Sazeral's doing. Of course, you got I think the Ouroboros could do that by itself if you do like extra combats with Ouroboros. But anyway, yeah, I'd say maybe for him specifically as a commander, but fits, I think, pretty well in the 99 of the Hearthhold deck that he comes in. And then we get to the last duo here of the same character with the uncommon, then common. And we'll start with the uncommon this time. It's Tanuk Memorial Ensign. And this is the one exception of that trend that we've been seeing where the uncommon is kind of worthless by itself and maybe just worthless in general. And this Tanuk is maybe not the most interesting commander. A Gruul 1 in red-green for a 2/4 Kavu pilot with landfall. Whenever a land enters under your control, he deals 1 damage to each opponent. And if this has triggered a second time this turn, you draw a card as well. Now, if you're putting in, say, 5 lands on a turn, that only means that you're going to deal the 5 damage and still just draw the 1 card. So however many lands you put in on your turn, you're still only going to be drawing the 1 card. But, I mean, that's still another nice little upside there. I think as a budget deck, you can make a pretty solid little Gruul landfall deck here. So maybe you move them up to fun. I don't know that it's the most interesting, and some of the other ones in that category are pretty good. I would say maybe, though. Still certainly a guy that, you know, if you are going the super budget route, I think this is a very solid super budget landfall commander. And yeah, he's going to deal damage pretty quick. I suppose the one thing is this is the only place where you're going to get this just very simple. It's already stapled on. You don't have to jump through hoops like you do with Hearthhold to deal the damage. And it does deal the damage directly. So this time if you manage to have him out and somehow you put Tanuk out there and do 21 land triggers, he doesn't even have to swing. He'll just kill everybody with commander damage just from those landfall triggers, as it is him dealing the damage when that comes in. So you start dealing commander damage with landfall. Maybe that moves him up to fun. And you know, I do kind of want to build some budget decks, so I could see building him, but I'll put him in the fun category for now. But I can definitely see where it's not necessarily the most interesting. So I think kind of between these two. But I'll leave him in the fun category for now. I know it's not the most balanced looking thing, but that's all right. And it might continue to get worse as this next one. The other Tanuk, also pretty good. This is the Steadfast Second. And mono red, 2/2 red for a 3/5 Kavu pilot with some pretty fun looking art. Definitely very red attacky looking art, and that's what he's wanting to do, as other creatures you control have haste. And then artifact cards and red cards in your hand have warp 2 and a red. Of course, warp being the ability from the set where you can play it for its warp cost, sticks onto the battlefield for a turn, and then at your end step it goes into the fun exiled warp zone, where then you can play it later for its normal cost. So as his own commander, that means that everything in your deck is going to be, I suppose not everything has to be either red or an artifact. You could have some colorless, like an Eldrazi would be devoid of colors, so he's not going to be red, it's not going to be an artifact. You could get some things maybe that he isn't activating, but you probably wouldn't if you're going to be playing this Tanuk as your commander. Although I suppose if you have other ways to give things haste, then you can just... Nah, you're probably not. You're probably staying away from the Eldrazi's, but since you can't put them out there. But you can find other big, huge artifact creatures, like big costs, like Blightsteel Colossus or something like that. Just these giant artifact creatures that you can, or even giant red creatures, you just warp in. They've got haste. They smack and then go into exile. Maybe you never even see them. Maybe this is just an aggressive enough deck that they never come out of the exile, that you just warping things in for 3. They get a bunch of damage in with their haste and go into warp. This is one I could see myself building this deck. Do I want to do it? Honestly, I mean, the honest truth is I think he's probably going to end up in a 99 of... I have a Haste Matters Tenev deck from the Dragons of Tarkir that still hasn't really been finished, but oh boy. I mean, he's certainly either fun or paper. Do I think I'll build it? Though I will say the nice thing, and actually what might push me here is, while he himself is not necessarily budget right now, is $750 card at its base value at the moment that I'm recording this. You can make a pretty decent just budget deck with just red stuff, big red things that you're just big red things, big artifacts you're just warping in and doing that haste. Now, obviously, if you go too heavy into the red, you're gonna run into issues of people just removing Tinuk, and then you're kind of screwed. But yeah, either way, I can see myself building him. I'll put him at fun for now. I don't know if I will. I think he's probably gonna find a home somewhere else. But then we get to the last two here. And we'll start with, I think, the first card that got spoiled from the set, or one of the first ones. It was certainly the first spacecraft we saw. It was the card that was shown as, hey, there's this new mechanic called spacecraft coming in. And that's the Sarima. Sarima. I think that's right. The Sarima. We got a 3-mana, 1 and 2 white spacecraft here that comes in and does actually do something when it comes in, which is always nice. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a legendary creature, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle. So that is honestly most of the reason you're playing this. Yeah, you can crew it up to 7. It gains flying, becomes a 5/5 flyer with other tapped legendary creatures you control have indestructible. Of course, they do have to be tapped to get the indestructible, but that doesn't mean if you go into combat and they swing and they don't have vigilance, then they're indestructible and can't die in combat, which is, I suppose, nice, or at least not in attacking combat. I don't know that this is a commander. I think this is a 99 card. I'm sure you could find a way. I mean, I suppose you could probably find all sorts of ways to do hidden commander and kind of like almost like situational hidden commander. Just have a bunch of different white legendaries, and depending on what you want, you just play the Sarima and go find the one that you want for that particular moment in time. And if you can crew it up and make whatever commander you want to find legendary, great. But honestly, yeah, probably more of a 99 card, though I could see a path to building it, but yeah, probably more of a 99. Obviously, plenty of uses in a 99 if you're looking at like the just good stuff Joda, just legendaries Joda. You can go find whatever legendary you want. That's pretty decent. Then make things indestructible. That's also pretty good. Yeah, there's plenty of ways for this to find a home in different decks where white is fairly prominent and where you want to be protecting. A 3-mana tutor for a legendary isn't terrible then with something it can actually do later that also is a pretty decent effect on top of being a 5/5 flyer, which is not insignificant. And then finally, the last one here, Shu Efete, and this is a 1 and 2 black, so 3-mana 2/3 with a pretty fun ability here. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's a skeleton in addition to its other types and has no abilities. Activate this only as a sorcery. So again, if we're able to untap Shu Efete here a few times, then you can just go and get however many things you want from your graveyard. But the most fun part of this one is just the things that you could go get. Now, this is a deck where you're going to be using a lot of, and I think you've probably seen it, but maybe you've already seen some people doing this. This is certainly one that I've seen some people do. I think Command Zone, when they did their first big introduction commander gameplay with the RuPaul Drag Race people, this was Jimmy Wong's deck, and it looks a lot of fun. He's going and getting a lot of black creatures that might have, certainly one thing you can do is go get some big black creatures that have downsides on their text box. You just try and get them into the graveyard, mill them into the graveyard. Black has plenty of ways to do that. Discard them into the graveyard, and then go get things like your Death's Shadow, 1-mana 13/13. Heck, you can even throw Death's Shadow out there, and if you have over 13 health, it just dies right away and just goes into your graveyard. Then you bring it back as a 13/13, and pretty easy to get that one into the graveyard and then get it back. And lots of other Pretty solid ones. Of course, another way that you can do it, I think this is actually more the way that they did it on the command zone, was to have a flicker ability. So you get things into your grave, just big things that you actually might want the text box of. They're pretty good cards, but you bring them back as a skeleton, and then you flicker them, and then they come back onto the battlefield after being flickered as the full-on card. They're no longer... They don't, all the extra stuff of being a skeleton and losing abilities is wiped off, and they come back as themselves with the full text box. So a couple of different ways you can go, and all of it works in the same deck. You have a few things that you can target if you don't have your ways to flicker things, and if you have the way to flicker things, then great. You just make sure you pick the right things to flicker, and you're off to the races with, I think, a pretty fun mono black commander here. And it is one that I am already working on a list for. I think this is another one where you can pretty easily make a pretty fun budget list. And since Shuafit himself is, or herself, I don't know actually which way we're going there, itself, human wizard. So one way or the other, Shuafit, we'll say, I think it's a her. Looks kind of feminine face. Either way, 35-cent card right now, so this is a deck that you can certainly make on a pretty solid budget and have a lot of fun with it. So ending on a strong note here. That's my list. A pretty quick one here so far. I think it was just like 20-something commanders. Let's see, 10, 22 legendaries, and 20 of them are playable. 2 of them, I think you're working a little bit too hard to try to convince yourself that the 2 of them are playable. None of them fell into that specific deck category. I just don't. I mean, maybe I take that one out. We'll see. We'll see how it goes in the mess with this. Let me know what you think. If there's any other categories you'd like to see, or maybe somehow split the fun commanders. The thing is, like, I mean, like, how fun is this really? Is this guy really that much fun? He's really strong, so I feel like he belongs higher up on the tier list, but I guess casting spells for free is pretty fun. But yeah, no particular order there. I think these are ones, again, I could see myself building the Dawnsire. I could see myself building this guy. Honestly, really any of the ones, I think the Sammy is the only one that I don't really see myself building, but I could see myself building just about any of these other ones in the fun category if I had and honestly, I could see myself building the Guideline Station as well. I don't know. That's just because I see 5 color and I think, ooh, that's fun. Expensive mana base, but that's okay. I already have pretty much all the cards I need for proxying them in for my proxy binders, but that's all right. Anyway, I'm getting out of hand rambling here at the end. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, what your favorite commander of the set is, if there's any that you already have built, you've played with, and maybe surprised you in some way, any fun tech you found about any of these commanders. Love to know about it down in the comments. Maybe change my mind on some of these. But until next time, stay safe out there and make someone else's day magical. Have a magical day yourself, all that good stuff. All right, later. Peace.